Alright folks, this is HTML basics lesson, HTML syntax and structure. This is our web class 3 and today we'll be talking about HTML syntax and structures. Alright, so let's just do a brief recap on what we did on the previous class. We talked about HTML syntax. We see HTML is a markup language which we use tags to mark content up. Okay, so every single content on HTML is being marked up with tags. For example, we have the head tag. This is a head being marked up with, we have our angular bracket. Okay, so that you understand what I'm saying. In a markup, I say we have our angular bracket. This is our angular bracket open looks like. We have our tag name. For this case, our tag is h1. Then we have angle brackets close. Okay, then for the closing tags, of course, every tag, some tags has open and closing tag. So for the h1, we have opening, and the closing tag is angle bracket open / your tag name, which is h1, and angle bracket close. So this is basically how a tag is being written. Every content in HTML is being embedded in a tag. Now in our code apps, trying to make some codings, and I'll be using an app called code. I've already made a video on how to use code. So we will going to manipulate some of the browsers and manipulate some of the tags, use so many tags in this particular format. Okay, yes, I know you'll be asking why I'm gonna start building all the website I want to start building. I want you to understand every single details first before we dive into making more formidable and more organized site. All right, so I just created a p tag. This is a p tag. It says this is a paragraph tag that is used to display text to the user. For those of you that don't know how I brought this p tag, okay, let me just cut the right up out so that I won't have to onto X. All right, so like for every text editor or this particular text editor, like I said, it has automatic write up tags for us. Okay, so if I just click opening tag and it puts p, remember I told you the tag name, then close it, automatically give us the closing tag. So all I have to do is write my text. This is a paragraph, but for the case that I've written already, I just have to Ctrl V to paste what I've written. Okay, this is a paragraph tag that is used to display a text to the user in paragraph, and if I click play, you can see the text written boldly. Now, like I said, the p tag gives a text content to the reader or to the browser only. There is no much things to see, no video, nothing at all. So before you be asking why is it just only a write up, yes, it's basically for text. All right, so if I decide to change this p tag into h1 and I click play, wow, you discover that the text format has changed. Now the browser have a default setting that once I say this is now h1, the browser automatically h1, therefore it's going to make the text look more bolder, more bigger, to indicate that it is now unheaded, not just a paragraph tag anymore. So you can clearly see the difference between the p tag and the h1 tag is that the h1 makes the text, the h1 tag is for headings, making the text bigger and more bolder, unlike the p tag just to write a simple content text. All right, so moving on, I really want to talk about something else again inside called attributes. All right, attributes. Now what is an attribute? Someone may ask. Attributes are ways to give more information about a tag. Okay, attributes are ways to give more information about a tag. Attributes are ways to give information about a tag. All right, so now let's still work on this our h1 tag and let's look some attributes. All right, now the first attribute I want us to give to this h1 tag is a class attribute. No worry, when we get into deeper in the class, we'll talk more about class attributes. Okay, so what is it all about? I have to come to that opening h1 paragraph, h1 opening tag. That is where I embedded the attribute. It's just like I don't know how to put it, but when you're writing a test or making something, you want to write more information about that thing, but without displaying it. Okay, for instance, I say, hey, I want this text to be red. The browser is going to automatically make that text red. How do you do those things? It's called an attribute. You put it inside the opening tag. Okay, first of all, the attribute I want to introduce to all of you is called a class. All right, let's make the class attribute. Simple written, just as I mentioned, inside the opening tag, class. Okay, you discover that it's color not coloring white because it's not going to show. It's inside a tag. All right, so class equal to, then quotation mark, my quotes mark, then just write my class. All right, maybe in one of the classes I'm going to tell you what the class attribute is all about. So this is basically a class attribute. It tells more information about this heading tag. When we get deeper, we will understand. So let me give you more other attributes that can be visible. Let's say a style attribute. Okay, for the style attribute, we'll put style, okay, equals quotation mark, and the style I want to put is color. All right, and we say the color should be red. All right, so if we play this, oh sorry, I think I made a mistake somewhere. All right, okay, I think I misspelled STYL. Okay, sorry. All right, so if I play it, you discover that the heading tag is now red in color. What did I tell you? I said for this particular heading tag, I want the color to be red. Okay, so that attribute I imputed there is called the style attribute. Okay, the style attribute, it goes by the attribute, the property, and the value. The attribute, okay, this here is the attribute, this here is the attribute, this is the property, while this is the value. All right, so that is for an attribute. Attribute always have the attributes, the name itself, the property, and the value. Okay, the attribute name, style, the property I want to change its color. It can decide to be background, it can decide to be anything. Okay, let me give you for example tag I want to make mention of is the strong tag. Okay, the strong tag, that is embedding an attribute inside an attribute. That is tags in tag. Don't mind this styling. Probably when we start coding, we won't be using inline styling. This thing I did now is inline styling, whereby embed the style into the HTML file. Sometimes your code will look rough. Alright, this is called inline styling, and sometimes your code will look rough and messy. You might not even want to view the code because of the inline styling. So when we want to start styling, we will be using what we call cascading style sheet file. So for this, you can see that the style is being embedded. All right, so let's add something else again. Let's add some other styles, and the style I want to put is called emphasis attribute, the emphasis attribute. So if I want to put the attribute inside this place, all I have to do, remember I told you, is tags. All right, so opening tag and emphasis attribute closing tag. Now you discover that itself gives me the closing tag, but I don't want the closing tag to be here. Instead, I want it to be here, so that the whole of that text will be emphasized. All right, so okay, still giving me his closing tag. All right, let me just delete one. That is when you decide to write the code first. Okay, so now let's look up. If you look very careful, let me change this into p tag so that you can be seeing it clearly. All right, now if you look carefully, you discover that from here to this place is in italics. Why? You've told the browser, I want to emphasize on this text. That's what that tag does. It's an emphasis tag. You've told the browser, emphasize on this text. It's now slanted a little bit to make sure that that text is emphasized. Sometimes you opened a web page, you see some word emphasize. That is how they did it. Okay, another I want to show you now is tags inside tag, embedding a tag inside a tag. That is, it's called nesting a tag, tags within tags. Okay, so if you want to, let me say we want to embed a tag into this place, inside this still emphasis we want to embed another tag called a strong tag. Strong tag is another tag for making a text bold. All right, it has given me its closing. Okay, I don't want the closing here. Okay, and I want the closing here. Strong. All right, now look. Okay, let me space this. Now if you look closely, you discover that the display is not just slanted a little bit, is now bold. It's called the nesting a tag inside a tag. You, when we get into more of the coding, you will see more of it. Okay, so I was able to emphasize from display to paragraph, and decided to bold display. That is called nesting a tag within a tag. Okay, so I've able to show you 3 or 4 tags. I've showed you the strong tag, I've showed you the class tag, I've talked about the attribute, I've talked about the style tag. All right, now the next thing I want to talk about is index. Okay, I'm going to quickly do something, but I think one of these a code app is going to try to cancel what I'm going to do, because it's going to automatically be correcting itself, but I will just do it anyway. So indexing. All right, so that's a code for you, but I will still continue doing what I'm doing. Okay, I'll pause this video so that the video won't be long. All right, so this is what I'm trying to talk about, indent. You can see this is a div tag. Probably when we get to more of the video, I will talk more about div tag when we select coding. Okay, so this is a div tag, and most times we write code like this. If this code is basically like this, it's going to be difficult to read. Okay, you can see the code is just makes it straight div, href, whatsoever. That's an anchor tag. In case you don't know, this href that up here, this is an anchor tag. Okay, this is an anchor tag here. Okay, that is the anchor tag for putting a link or connecting the web page to another. So if this is like this, it's going to be difficult to read. All right, so what is indent all about? Indenting is just all about rearranging your div or your tags to make it more presentable and more lookable, so that when you're working or when you are working on particular site, you can rearrange, somebody else can read your code without much stress. All right, so this is me indenting. Even now, this is another way of indenting. Okay, in this same pattern, the code is still looking more messy because it's just on a straight line. There should be a means that this, you will say, oh, this div, look at the closing tag, this div, look at the closing tag. In case you want to attack a particular div, or when you are building more of a container, you use div more often. So you have to indent a div perfectly. So what's the indent? Like I said, this tab key here, when I was explaining a code, I was able to explain some of these things. Okay, this is indent. This tab key is what we basically use to indent a div. So let's indent this div. Okay. All right, so moving on. Sorry. Alright, so if you look closely and clearly, you will discover that this code is more readable than before. More readable, more presentable. I want to indent small so that alright, so now look closely. The code is now more readable. You can tell that this div that starts from here, this is where it ends. A code automatically give you a line to read. Okay, A code gives you a line indenting different divs. So this is what indent is all about, arranging the code to look more presentable and more clearly. Now you won't see the div once you display it on a web browser, because that div, like I said, is just like segmenting your codes for readability, to style it, especially when you want to, for classing, when you want to style, and probably when you want to put in JavaScript. That is when you will understand div and class. All right, so for now, div rearrange our codes or make our code look more presentable, and I talked on all this. All right, before we wrap up, let's look at a brief summary of all we talked about. Okay, so we in this class we talk about HTML uses tags, opening in angular bracket and closing tag to present content. Our content are within these tags. Okay, so the angle bracket tag name, angle bracket close, your content, angle bracket open, / angle bracket close. We talk about different tags which we listed. We mentioned emphasis tag, the strong tag, the class tag, the div tag, the which other tag again, style tag. Okay, these are the few tags we talked. Now we say tags can contain attributes, and I said attributes are ways of giving more information to a tag. Okay, tags can contain attributes, giving more information to that tag, and I mentioned that you can nest a tags within a tag. Okay, tags can be nested in other tags. You discover that inside the emphasis, I was able to bolding the display. So tags can be nested within tags, and tags are normally indented when nested for readability. We have to nest tags for good presentation and for readability. We're going to see in our next class when we'll be talking on creating our first web page. We're going to be creating our web page in the next class. Okay, so see you in the next class.